more accessible game development. And now we're building our own tools to help each other. And that's pretty amazing. This solution it's been around for like 4 or 5 years now. But it's really becoming a large part of our team, the creators of help new people make games. So I'm really excited about it. If I can help out.
That'll do. And I get that fight on that.
Yeah, I'll keep quiet now.
That's actually a point.
Sorry.
That's right.
That is unintuitive, but okay.
Well, I mean, if people have to download it.
Okay. 1 game a month, go for it.
So, hello.
Hi.
Hi. Owen has invited me to talk about 1 game a month in Dublin, and a group we've been running for about as long as dubLUDO has been running in Dublin with a slightly different remit. And since it's actually also our 1-year anniversary, it's actually very apt. So what we are based on is this international organization online called 1 Game a Month, and you can visit them on onegameamonth.com. And what they do is they provide an optional theme and a website, and they even gamify the whole thing. So if you make a game, you get points, and there's an online community and forums, and it's absolutely wonderful. I entirely recommend this as a thing to be doing if you want to be making games and trying out new ideas and seeing where you want to go with your game making, and you want to do so in an online space. What we felt though was we really like being able to meet up with people. We really like knowing the people we're working with, having a local community to work together on these projects with. So we created, which was 1 Gam Dublin, which is just the exact same project, the exact same premise, but with a very specific local community. So we started it April 2013, about the same time as dubLUDO started, very coincidentally. It's a much smaller community. There's about a dozen people, I think, active in it. Maybe each month there'll be about 4 or 5, well, 3 or 4 games on average, I'd say, turn up. So each month you get to come along to a pub, you bring your laptop, or you can show on other people's laptops, you show your game, people get to see it, they get to contribute back to your ideas, you get to get a sense for how they actually worked when your ideas were realized and how people perceived them. Then after we all try each other's games, we present the next optional theme for the month. So you don't have to work on any particular theme, you can work on old games, you can work on a game you want to bring further, you can work on a new idea you've had, completely unrelated. But we do provide a theme if you want to constrict yourself. One thing that the online space doesn't provide is it's a space for creating traditional games. So I wouldn't say a half, but probably about a quarter to a sixth of the games you've made so far throughout the group have been traditional games, of card games and board games and the likes. And it's been really great to have a place where you can spend a few weeks making one of those games and bring it along, and have a few people sitting at tables who are willing to sit down and play your game, because it's a very, very safe place to bring it, because everybody there knows the pain of making games. So no one is going to say, what the hell is this? They're going to say, this is wonderful, but maybe you should try this. And that's really, really nice. It's a great thing to have. So why we do it is for these reasons, for motivation, support, and inspiration. So having a community, this is the great thing about college. I don't think the great thing about college is teachers or syllabi. I think the great thing about college is having people who are doing the same thing as you, who are raising the bar around you. People who are doing what you are doing, and you want to be as good as them, or you want to not necessarily compete against them explicitly, but you want to be able to talk to them as peers. And you always put other people's work above your own work, just because people are modest that way. And it's great to have people who are working, who you know, who have real names and faces. And and your work is almost everybody else in the group. Sorry, absolutely everybody else in the group. When I look at their work, it's all absolutely wonderful, but I know when I present work, I think everybody else is brilliant. I know everybody else thinks the exact same. And it's great to have a group where you can be pushed forward by that. It's also great to have a group where you know you can bring a piece of work and people will tell you nice things about it, but also what's wrong with it, what you could change with it to bring it forward. And because it's 1 game a month, you don't need to actually implement those changes, but you bring them forward into the next project. You're working on something new, but you're bringing forward the education you've gained by having worked on something, having gotten the critique, having gotten the feedback. And inspiration. So at the beginning of the month, when we have our meetups, when we present the new theme, that tends to happen about halfway through the evening. And the rest of the evening tends to take place around conversations around what are we going to do, what are we going to try, people coming up with crazy ideas, impossible ideas you couldn't do in a month. But still, those are ideas that turn into the seeds of games that actually end up happening. Or someone will come with a wonderful idea and people start guilting them into having to do it because people really want the idea to exist so they can try it themselves. And it's absolutely a wonderful, wonderful experience. So to go through the themes we've been doing over the last year, like this is going from this column through this column. We started off with rogue, through industrial, nature. The fourth one's kawaii, then give up, fiction. The make $1 one was interesting because that was the concept there was not to make a game of making $1, but to try and make your game make $1. So convince someone somewhere to give you $1 for the game. Very few people did it, but it was an interesting approach to what you think about games. I think the idea there was we've been about through 6 months of game making. Take one of your old games, polish it up, put it on a website, add an ad, sell it on put a Humble Bundle widget on it or something. Just try and make a little bit of money. Try and explore the other aspects. Because for the largest part, we're interested in the artistic and the creative, and it's easy to ignore the business side, the realities of making games. So that was our one little dipping a toe in trying to provoke people into exploring the business sides of making games. And then from there we went on to making regular, more traditional themes like Gods and Monsters, The End, Storm, Masks, Journey. And that's really what the group is about. We meet up once a month and we encourage people to make games. It doesn't need to be a new game. People have progressed old games and brought them along. People have found that they don't actually need to make a game at all. Just simply coming along and having the conversation is enough to drive them through the next month, where they might then make a game. There's absolutely no onus on anybody to do anything. But because as a group that's so enthusiastic, it's absolutely wonderful and much more gets done. And there isn't a sense of pressure about it. It's really, really nice. So, I mean, this is actually quite a simple presentation. But after this, I'm just going to show off some of the games people have made. And largely, that couch there, point your applause at that couch there, which is the owners of most of the games are going to be showing off. So Owen, I'll go in there. I think these were your first 2 months. These your first 2 months? Your first month was a platformer game in which you jumped around, you had your own action script engine, your own 2D physics to implement it, and it was really, really impressive and it was wonderful. And you had to try and collect these small boxes to make larger boxes again, and then it progressed into something more complex with extra things on top, and it was wonderful to see. And then we had this very simple game where you had sort of beat matching game, and you're presented with a sequence of things to touch, and then over here you have to touch these things in the right sequence, kind of like Bebop. Twisted, if that was the game it was called, I think. But it was this. I think you ended up putting it on Google Store at one point. Did you?
I never got around to it.
I never got around to it. You tried to. It was wonderful, but it was really, really relaxed. And it was nice to get feedback on it. It was lovely to see the game. They were really fun to play. You also made a board game at one point, which was great to see. Really professionally produced. And there is a picture of a bunch of very attractive people playing the game. At actually one of the dubLUDO events, Owen has been very, very nice to let us actually host some of the OneGam events inside of dubLUDO, because dubLUDO is definitely the larger event. And you made a wonderful card game and people were able to try it out and give you a bit of feedback on it, and it was lovely to see. What else have we? This is Colm Larkin. Colm Larkin started the group with me back in April. He isn't here today, unfortunately, because he's off in England presenting at some games conference there, because he's working on this game. This was his very first one game a month game, and he called it Dungeoneering, I think. And the idea was you didn't control the hero character, you controlled the dungeon. So you placed the objectives, you placed the treasures and the monsters, you placed the loadout, the layout of the dungeon, and your hero AI-wise progressed through it. And then he worked on a bunch more projects. This game was a game where it was a Tamagotchi game, and no matter what you did, it ended up killing itself. It was wonderful. It was a great game. And this was a very simple thing. I think he put together in one day. It was a demo of what would be a nice little platformer looking thing. He got some art, and there's a load of wonderful online art resources for if you want to build games. Most of the art in these games hasn't made by the people who make it. Actually, that's not true. Most of the games in his games And a bunch of my games haven't been made by themselves straight from the bat, because there's loads of online resources for finding great assets to bootstrap your games. But this is a great concept for just a simple platformer. But then after he did a few of these, he took his initial concept for the very first game he wanted to work on, and he brought it much further forward into this game. The exact same game, but just nicer assets, more content. And he's been working on this for the last few months. So every one game a month, he brings us along in its new form, and we give him feedback on it. And that's perfectly fine. I mean, this is the remit of the group. It's a place where it's just completely safe to do whatever you want to do. And he's been doing great work on it. He's now working full-time professionally on this, actually. This is one of his, actually probably my favorite game that he made, is Captains of Industry in response to the industry theme. And it was a card game, the entire remit of which was you would get cards about production of wheat or technological innovations related to raw resource production, and it was a very fun game. We played a whole bunch of them. And this is actually a picture of the very, very first one game a month meetup. And the people here are playing, I think John Kelly, who isn't here today, his card game. But it's very, very easy to make a card game and bring it along. It's a great place to sort of demo concepts. You can put together cards. Like, this was the very first idea. They were just pieces of paper cut out with words written on them. He described how we would play the game, and we played it. And the same with this game. These cards were just pieces of paper cut out. That's all that's required to get started. There's no technical requirement to get started. There's no artistic requirement to get started. All you need to do is want to make games, and there's a community that is willing to engage. And that's the really wonderful thing. Paul, he was a chat. He started 4 or 5 months ago working in Unity, and he's made a bunch of wonderful games, some of which will be on this laptop to try, I think, but due to sound, we probably won't turn them on. This was in response to Storm. Storm? No?
That was not a theme.
That was not a theme following game. Okay. But that was the very first game made in Unity. Flying around, there's a shield that guides you. You kill monsters. You kill these floating things. And this game was RGB, in which you applied, and I think you'll see it soon, you apply visual filters over the world, which causes the things inside it to change change their behavior based on what color filters you apply to the world, which is a really clever idea in response to the Masks theme, which was wonderful. And again, Unity makes it so easy to actually make games with cool ideas and just bring them forward. It's been really cool to see the work he's been doing. This was another Unity game done by Paul, which is required 2 Wiimote controllers controlling the 2 umbrellas, and you can try to there's wind forces throughout the world, and you're trying to get yourself down the cliff safely by controlling which way you point. And that was really fun, because having physical things in the real world, no matter what, is fun. And this is Paul's current work in progress in response to the Journey theme, involving lots of mosquitoes, which I've played but don't yet understand. I'm sure he'll describe it to you afterwards. But it's been wonderful to see all this work. Phil, over there, give us a shout. He's also been doing a bunch of work for quite a while with the One Game a Month. This is his current game, probably my favorite one so far. It's a speed game where you have the keyboard controls the location of the bus, and the mouse you're trying to solve this bomb puzzle over here. So if you drop below a certain speed, you blow up, and it's really, really encouraging. Because I mean, this has been done in a few days of serious work. I mean, not to take away from the work, but this is definitely a One Game a Month style project where he's been able to come up with a cool idea and run with it. And this is actually the current month, so we haven't gotten any feedback yet, and we're looking forward to see what it is at the end of the month. But it's absolutely wonderful. This game over here, you're a helicopter rescue pilot trying to rescue people from the top of burning buildings. As you collect more people, this simple chain of physics objects gets more awkward to manage, and if they crash into things, they all die, and it's terrible and tragic. And it's, again, so much fun. More of Phil's work. The GIFs working. Yeah, so this game was inspired by Space Hulk, a classic board game. This GIF isn't working, so I won't talk about it. But it's so good. Let's see, where are we? There's much more. the presentation would be good to work because I know who's next and I don't want to.
We'll go back to the local copy. Oh, it's frozen. Alright, cool.
If you can go to. Oh no, where's the lift gone?
Just run from this one, sure.
Okay, yeah, so if you go to that one, that'll be perfect. So, second last slide, Jonathan. Jonathan's been working on a bunch of games. A few of these were for Love and Dare as well. And that's actually a common thing with One Game a Month. We also, the times it aligns with the game crafts that happen. Quite often people will make their games for GameCraft and bring it along, and they'll have a few extra days to work on it, and we'll refine it, and they'll refine it, and then it's a nice place to show them off in a less competition-oriented environment than GameCraft might be. But unfortunately these kits aren't working. But this is a wonderful puzzle game here. This is a game where there's a maze you're trying to solve, but you only get to see a certain part around you, and this guy is trying to get to you. And it's this is a little top-down point-and shooter, top-down shooter game, great fun. And all of these have been done in the course of less than a month each. And I was so happy to see all the games that were made because I put out a small call on our mailing list for people to give me pictures. So I didn't want to take pictures of games people have made without their permission to show tonight. And there was actually a huge amount of work done over the last year. I was really, really happy to see it all. And all of these people were putting in a few days to a good few days a month to make these games, and really anybody could be doing it if they wanted to be doing it. And that really leads us to our last slide, getting involved in the group. What's involved? This morning, we used to be based on a Google Groups mailing list, and this morning I created a Facebook group because who uses email anymore? I know. So there's a new Facebook group. It's called One Game a Month Dublin, or One Gam Dublin. Feel free to join it. It's closed, so you need to press apply, but it's just to avoid spam. Come along to meetup. The meetups are once a month, tend to be held in Against the Grain on Camden Street. It's super casual. There'll be laptops there if you don't have your own to show off. Just make it available online somewhere and we'll get it available. And you don't need technical skills to get started, really at all. All you need to do is want to make games. If you want to make technical games, we'll absolutely help you. We'll point you at Unity tutorials. If you want, we can even sit down with you and help you make this, because we really like making games. But if you want to make sort of interactive storybooks or card games or board games or whatever we can play in a pub, come along and we will try and help you make it. And I think that's my last slide, so any questions are more than welcome.
Yeah, you said at the end you were getting all the images to show off today, and
Yeah.
you were almost surprised that kind of whether maybe you just you didn't remember that game for so long, etc. So do you think maybe there might be a space to have more showcases of your work, maybe every 3 to 4 months kind of thing?
Well, we have a showcase every month. People bring along their work, but I suppose the thing is because
Or a public facing one, I mean.
Oh, as in like a gallery type.
Yeah, or online somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah, so we do make people aware of the fact that one game a month, the international thing exists if you want to show it off. But the reason I think I was surprised is because there have been 12 showings. And people bring along 2 or 3 games a month for 12 showings. It's very easy to forget 36 games and remember 5 of them or something. So to see so much was simply wonderful. But yeah, there's definitely a space for, and we haven't even thought about it yet, but if we had our own website, if we had a gallery or something, that would definitely increase visibility. There hasn't been really much of a demand for it because most of these games have been very personal. It's more about development of skills and development of interest and trying out ideas than creating final games. But if there was a demand for it, and I might ask for the next meetup, see if people care for it, then I'd be more than happy to make them. Certainly, it's a good idea.
Are they all web player kind of games, or?
There's a bunch of web player type games. There's a few that were done in C, and there's a few done in Java that wouldn't be web player. But I think the majority of games have been Unity made. And I don't even like Unity, but I'd also make games in Unity if I had to. Just because, yeah, you're right, you can put them in the browser and it's really, really handy. Unity is great for making games. Yep.
So has there been a I mean, you organize this.
Myself and Colin Lockett.
Yes. In the participants, is there a experience curve? Are games getting better? Is that or do the participants feel that their games are getting better by making more games?
I haven't actually asked them.
Do the participants feel that this helps them get better at making games, but also finishing them?
This is my 4th month in, and the first month I'd never made a game. I'd done some basic programming in college years ago, but I'd never made an interactive anything. And the first little one-to-one movement with the mouse shooting game was my very first foray into anything. And month by month, because you carry what you've learned from the last month into your next project, and there might be a particular aspect or idea you're interested in. Like the latest one, I wanted to do something with flocking, kind of wave behavior. So I try to structure my idea around the theme for that, and I can take everything from the previous months. So yeah, absolutely, you build on the previous months that you're doing it. And it's nice to try and keep momentum going month on month to keep yourself going. It's also a very liberating feeling of being able to bin an idea after a month, even if it's not where you want it to be. It's like, well, I'm done with that now, next idea, and everything is fresh. Because I guess the most exciting part of a project is when you're starting it and having all the ideas, and it's a constant stream of exciting project starts.
I think I get most out of it is just like actually finishing projects. Like I like done a lot of things in my spare time before that with never actually something completed. But having like I think I have like 4 or 5 games that I've done in the past year that I wouldn't have done otherwise, and I can like show those to people and yeah, just feel better about the whole process.
What I get out of it is just I rarely finish the games, but I always get to the prototype stage, and usually I bin it after that, which is bad. I probably should finish games, but I'm probably getting better at knowing what's fun and what's not, and what's one of the games I like. I still don't know what kind of games I want to make, but I think we're getting closer to knowing what I want to make. I think I'm getting better at doing that, which is what I get.
May I ask, do you feel that part of that is being less worried about failing something?
Yeah, probably, because 2 of those games that were showed up, I didn't show to anyone because I wasn't happy with them, so I never show them to anyone. And then it was just like when Stephen asked for screenshots, I said, yeah, I'll just throw them up. So yeah, it's probably like the lack of, the risk of failure, it doesn't exist, so it's kind of like quite freeing.
Well, that's the thing, right? Because if you're making a game in a month, it's definitely going to be rough. It's not going to be polished by its very nature, so it's completely liberating to say, well, this is what I came up with in a month.
Even if it's terrible, like it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't matter.
The hardest part I've found in making games is finding the fun. Just finding the kernel of the game that's actually fun. And the thing that people have been really, really good at is finding the fun. So many of the games that have been turned up, they might have terrible graphics, or there might be bugs in them or whatever, but they're fun. And it's wonderful to see so many fun ideas turn up.
Can I do one more question, or is there anybody else with a question?
Yeah, go for it. The last question, I guess.
So, does doing one game a month, does it help you identify the feelings you have for a project that will be good? Because you mentioned something along those lines. I'm getting better at realizing what I think is exciting or interesting. Do you feel that you're getting a better grasp at what, as a designer, excites you or you find interesting, and does it help you select projects based on that better as you go on?
Yeah, I definitely noticed some of the projects I've worked on for the month, and then at the end of the month, I would never work on them again. Like, I just like, that is, and they might have been really promising to begin with, I might have been really excited about them, but just working on them for that month, just like, I know that if I was to work on a game like that again, I would approach it in a different way or something like that. But then other projects, I would completely, like, I would have 12 months worth of ideas to go with that with. So, yeah, I guess kind of helps me to identify areas that I would be able to make big games with, and the kind of games that I would like to spend time on again.
Go for it.
I just wonder if there's a difference between the one game a month crew and the dubLUDO crew when it comes to identifying yourself as an indie developer. I was reading recently that most indie developers in their profile, the very first thing is how much money they've made. And while the indie word might be as part of a conversation with AA or AAA, nonetheless you get the impression that a lot of indies, the satisfaction comes from the amount of sales. You know, whether it's Steam and Greenlight and all that kind of stuff.
Well,
Whereas one game a month seems to be a bit more.
Well, I wouldn't even say so much the satisfaction, but I would imagine in the indie space is more the validation. But as you were saying, I think it's the imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Once someone gives you money, that's a really concrete thing that sort of allows you to put the imposter syndrome away for them a while.
Oh no. No, the opposite. As soon as somebody gives you money, you get 1,000 times more terrified.
Okay, perfect.
You're like, this person actually expects something now.
Okay, but I mean, there's a difference between asking for money and expecting it, like putting yourself out there as an actual indie developer and simply making games. And I wouldn't speak for anybody else in the group whether they identify as such, but definitely the remit of the group is not to be an indie developer. It's to make games. If you want to be an indie developer while you're making games, wonderful. But the remit of the group is to make games, and the whole politics around what it is to be an indie developer is kind of detached.
I mean, that should be detached. I mean, I'm an independent developer. I call myself an independent developer. I identify as an independent developer. But in the end, it's like the reason we're in this medium is because we care about video games. Otherwise, we should probably be at the free-to-play summit instead of here. But I think that's good. I think it's good to keep the politics out of something like this, because this is, like you said, it is about inspiration and motivation, and I think in many ways about experience, about gaining experience. That at some point you can see what you do about that. I do a game a week is my little thing, and I still do that. I've been doing that for over 60 weeks now, and most of them are terrible because I just don't have time. But I refuse to give up on it by now. It's like, there's this thing called chain effect. I don't know. It's a psychological
I've
effect.
used it myself for lots of things.
Yeah, it's
very
like
useful.
if you keep doing things, it's harder to stop doing them because you're like, I have like 30 games a week. I'm not gonna skip my 31st one.
Yeah.
So it's actually been a really good way to stay creative. I would definitely, even if you're not doing this, like please start doing this if you want to be making video games. No, I love that. Like to keep the politics outside of this.
Yeah, it's definitely, the politics don't really come near it. It's a social community. It's people making games who like games, and they talk about games when they turn up together. That's as far as it goes.